Hi, and welcome to this video series, How to Solve Enterprise AI, with me, Errol Kohlmeister, Executive AI and Data Advisor, and
me, Lukas Crnkovic-Friis, CEO and founder of Peltarion.
In this episode, we're going to talk about why software is eating the world and why AI is next. So, Luca, why have software eaten the world?
Software allows for an exponential increase in optimization of a business. Basically, when you bring software in, you can solve many problems that were unsolvable much faster and at much lower cost. And with AI, you're just taking it to the next level.
Exactly. Now you're actually making use of it and creating value or incremental value as well. So software is a hard problem to solve, I think, if you're not doing it right. It is not just throwing hundreds of engineers at a problem and they're going to solve it as best as possible. There are probably going to be a lot of productivity losses when you're just throwing people at the problem. In some of the latest studies that's been out there, especially on the DevOps cycle, you see that if you organize around value, if you follow best practices when it comes to the software world, you're going to see tremendous amount of productivity gains. The same thing goes for AI. So what are some of these best practices that you see right now?
So I think it's first and foremost, it's most important to know at what stage you are. If you have looking at doing your first use cases, or if you have tens of use cases in production, or if you have hundreds of cases in production, depending on where you are in that stage, your requirements will be different. But you'll always have to have a strategy around the architecture and what you want to go as you scale it up.
And I would like to share some of my learnings here when I was at H&M. When we started out, we didn't have much requirements, to be honest. We set up autonomous teams, you know, that two pizza type that everybody wants to do, product team. They were given quite amount of freedom, and then they started running. They started running in 10 different directions, even though that the process was exactly the same. You build a model, you deploy a model, and then you use the model, and then you follow up, of course. What we realized quite fast into this was that if we don't have, as you mentioned, architectures and potentially the principles, we're not going to see any productivity gains, and it's going to be hard to scale. So do you have any comments on that? How do you actually get that architecture in place from an AI perspective?
So I think the same way as if we take the software example, you're probably not going to start off by building 5 or 6 different operating systems independently. You probably want to have a common platform for all of your projects. And in most cases, and I won't say all, but unless it's part of your core business to actually design and build AI platforms, you probably shouldn't be doing that, but you should get someone who spent hundreds of millions of dollars of doing it.
Yeah, of course. And I think what we learned was that, okay, now we're at the stage when we have these 10 different use cases and they're just eating, so many people, so many data engineers, software engineers, data scientists. We did about 10 use cases initially, and we had 150 people working. And what we realized is, we're going to get value. It's quite hard to start scaling these type of processes. So 0 to 10, you can do it if you have money to hire 150 people. But what when you start going from 10 use cases to 100 to potentially thousands? What if your board of directors thinks that these 10 were so successful, now we're going to amplify all operational processes with AI? How do you then tackle that problem? And like you say, then it becomes a platform problem, in my opinion. And of course, when you're starting out, it's easy to just run on the value. And I think in an early episode, we said start with value and then structure. Now we're at the structure problem. How are we going to handle that? The biggest problem we had when I was doing the H&M journey was that now we needed to go back and re-architect all the different platforms to cater for scale, which took 1.5, almost 2 years to complete. And then we started thinking about platform. How can you make sure that you don't make the same mistakes that we did, that you plan for scale already from day one then?
Start with platform earlier.
Yeah.
And start with something that can scale with your needs, basically. But ultimately, you will make mistakes in your AI journey, and they will be painful. I think that's thoroughly unavoidable. But you can minimize that by trying to take the advantage of the experience of others, basically.
I think that, and I mean, we're learning things. It's just like you want to abstract away a lot of the complexities. Coming from a technical background, and I mean, we understand these topics, It's easy when you're an expert to jump into the most complex problems at once. But in order for you to reach scale and critical mass, you need to start abstracting away from the complexity. Because what we're doing now when you're thinking platform is that you're opening up the development of AI models to a larger portion of the organization. You're not going to hire 100 data scientists to run on the platform. You're not going to hire 1,000 data scientists to do it. It's going to be business analysts. It's going to be product owners. It's going to be another type of users these days. So abstraction levels or layers are extremely important when you're doing these things.
And it's also an absolute necessity because there is no chance a poor data scientist one day can do financial analysis, the next day do sort of customer support things, the third antenna design or whatever, depending on the company. So it ultimately to scale, it has to go to the domain experts who are actually working in the departments. And for that to work, a lot of the complexity, as I said, has to be abstracted away.
Yeah. And I think one of the sensitive topics for a long time that I've encountered is that the people that actually are working on these problems, that they are good at the problem solving, potentially not the scaling. So sometimes they need to take a step backwards and maybe not play around too much with the latest tools and technologies that's going to yield the best results, but rather something that's going to create results that they can use and can be scaled. I have a saying, which some people hate me for, but it's, I don't care how good your model is, as long as it's not in production and delivering value. What do you think about that?
A model that isn't deployed is worthless. So one of the core things that when we talk to customers, it's commit to deploy. You have to go in that you're going to deploy this thing. Otherwise, it's no value. It's no value. Then you could have skipped the exercise altogether. But I think also what's important is that we move away from every enterprise doing the same things all over again. I mean, the scaling issue that if you look from a technical perspective, it's going to be exactly the same for H&M as it's going to be for Ericsson, as it's going to be for ABB. There's going to be differences, but the sort of, from a core technological architectural point of view, you'll still have to version control your models, you'll still have to track your data and all of the nice stuff.
I think a question that some companies need to ask themselves is, how special do you think that you are in this process? Is it worth creating IP around it? Is it there where your value lies? Or is your value in actually getting new things out to improve the existing processes you have in your organization? Also, I think when it comes to all these things, I mean, we talk about cloud, prerequisites for actually scaling, technology advantages, etc. Reusability of components, demand forecasting, for instance. We have seen companies like Facebook, they've deployed Profit, which can be reused with the same processes, although might not be the best results every time, but at least you are able to get time to value out there. And then, of course, having modular architecture in the things that you're doing, which means that you see the technology landscape as a Lego system. Here you have a partner, here you're buying a platform, here you're developing technology. So making sure that you don't couple it too much together, but rather have loosely coupled architecture, which makes it easier to change the technology as you have as well.
And there is a lot of standardization today. So AI platforms and all that infrastructure is becoming a commodity. It's not really something that you have to rethink and reinvent from scratch.
So in summary, what you need to do is focus on best practices. Learn from the companies that might be a little bit further ahead than you, that's gone through the same journey. Don't buy Hadoop platform. It's one of those experiences today. Make sure to minimize technical debt. Every line of code that your engineers and data scientists are writing is going to be handled at some point. Let's make that handling as easy as possible. Cloud is a competitive edge today. Not every company can use it, but it's really creating more flexibility and a lower time to value. So it's a big go there if you can. Focus on reusable components. It is not only about creating one piece of software or one thing on a platform. Make sure that you reuse the thing you're doing as well. I remember what we did at H&M was the first use case took 12 months. Reusing components from that use case took 6 months later on, and then 3 months. So you reduce time to value with that as well. Make sure you have an ecosystem. Modular architecture allows you to work with multiple partners, have a loosely coupled architecture, and make sure you have a plan to migrate off as well. Not because you need to, not because you want to, But at some point, you need to be able to get that leverage as well. Reusable modular architecture enables you to work with multiple partners and pick best practices.